What if you spent the entire weekend building the raised bed of your dreams? You went out, bought the wood, brought it home, hauled it to the backyard, and built the most exquisite garden bed ever. Then you filled the bed with soil, planted it, stepped back feeling pretty proud of yourself, and watch as your tomato plants just sat there stunted and yellow. Your lettuce germinated, and then it stopped, like it just gave up. It's not bad luck, and it's not the weather. It's what went into the bed before any plant was ever put in the ground. Let's make sure that doesn't happen to you. I'm Carol from Almost 2 Acres. Let's talk soil mix.
Welcome back to the Raised Bed series. We've covered why raised beds make sense, how to design your layout, and what materials to build with. Today is the one that I think matters most in terms of long-term success, because you can have the most beautiful cedar bed in the most perfectly designed garden room, but still have disappointing harvest if what's inside the frame isn't right. Soil is everything. Let's get into it. Before we talk about what goes in, I want to spend a moment on what shouldn't go in, because this is the mistake that costs people a lot of time and money. The first thing to avoid is unknown fill dirt. I know it's tempting. Sometimes you can get a truckload of garden soil or topsoil delivered for very little money. And when you're staring at a large empty bed that needs a significant volume of material, cheap fill is appealing. But unknown fill dirt can carry weed seeds by the thousands. It can be contaminated with herbicide residue, certain ones of which persist even through composting. This will devastate your garden for years, and it can have structural problems like compaction or poor drainage baked right into it. If you can't verify where topsoil came from and what it's been exposed to, it's a genuine risk. The second thing to be cautious about is cheap bagged garden soil from a big store used on its own. Some of it is fine, some of it mostly composted wood filler with very little actual nutritional value, and the quality varies enormously between brands and even between batches of the same brand. It can also be so light and peat heavy that it compresses dramatically within a single season, leaving your bed looking half empty by midsummer. And the third one, this one surprises people, is filling your bed entirely with compost. Pure compost sounds like it should be wonderful, and the logic makes sense on the surface. But straight compost without any mineral soil component can actually be too rich and too free draining for many plants, and it breaks down and settles very rapidly. You want compost to be a major component of your mix, not the entirety of it. So what does good raised bed soil actually look like? University extension research gives us a really solid starting framework here, and it's simpler than a lot of the complicated recipes you'll find online. The baseline that comes up consistently from university horticulture programs is a roughly equal ratio of good quality compost and topsoil or loam, so approximately 50% compost and 50% topsoil by volume. Some programs refine this slightly to suggest around 60% topsoil or loam and 40% compost, but the principle is the same. You want a blend that has the biological richness and moisture retention of compost combined with the mineral content and structural stability of actual soil. If you want to build on that foundation, add around 10 to 20% coarse perlite or horticultural grit to the mix. This improves drainage and prevents compaction over time, especially if you're growing root vegetables or if your beds are in a position where they receive heavy rainfall. Some gardeners add a small amount of biochar, that's activated charcoal, to this mix as well. There's decent research suggesting it improves water retention and provides long-term habitat for beneficial soil microbes. It's not essential, but it's a worthwhile addition if you have access to it. What you're building here is something no-dig and compost-forward enthusiasts would recognize immediately. A living growing medium that functions as an ecosystem, not just a substrate for roots to push through. The compost brings the biology. The topsoil or loam brings the minerals and structure. Together, they create something that your plants and the organisms that support them can actively thrive in. Now let's talk about what goes underneath your soil mix, because this is where the no-dig philosophy really comes into its own, and where raised beds and permaculture thinking overlap well. The first thing you're going to do before you add any soil at all is lay cardboard directly on the ground inside your bed frame. Plain corrugated cardboard. broken down boxes, nothing with heavy plastic coatings or metallic inks, laid down with the edges overlapping generously so there's no gaps for weeds to push through. This cardboard does several things at the same time. It suppresses any existing grass or weeds underneath the bed without you having to dig or use any herbicide. It also provides an immediate food source for earthworms, which will begin working their way up through it within weeks. And as it breaks down over the following months, it adds organic matter to the base of your bed and creates channels that help establish drainage. If you're placing your bed on grass, don't bother stripping the turf first. Just lay the cardboard right over it and let the whole system break down together. The grass will die back under the cardboard, and the earthworms and soil organisms will do the work of incorporating it into the soil over time. This is the no-dig principle in its purest form. You're not destroying the existing soil ecosystem by inverting it with a spade. You're simply adding to it from above and letting biological processes do what they're designed to do. On top of the cardboard, add your soil mix. Work in layers if it helps you manage the materials. Some gardeners like to add a few inches of woody material or rough compost first, then the finer growing medium on top. Whatever works practically, the cardboard layer is the foundation that sets the whole system up correctly. This is the part that I love to talk about, and I think it's one of the most underused techniques in raised bed gardening, the Hugelkultur core. Hugelkultur is a German word that translates roughly as mound culture, and the basic principle is that you bury woody material, logs, branches, brush, wood chips, anything coarse and carbon rich, beneath your growing medium and let it break down slowly from within the bed. Sepp Holzer, the Austrian permaculture farmer who popularized this approach, described it as building a slow-release sponge inside the soil, and that's actually a remarkably accurate description of what happens. Here's how it works in a raised bed context. Instead of filling the bottom half of your bed with expensive topsoil and compost, you fill it with logs, large branches, and woody debris, whatever you have available. Old firewood that's starting to rot is ideal. Branches from tree prunings, wood chips, even straw or hay. These are the transition materials between the woody layer and the finer growing medium above. You then add your soil mix on top of this woody core, leaving enough depth, at least 8 to 12 inches, for your plant roots to establish comfortably in the finer soil mix before they start encountering the wood below. What happens over the following months and years is naturally wonderful. The wood slowly decomposes, and as it does, it feeds a fungal network that in turn makes nutrients available to your plant roots in a way that synthetic fertilizers just can't replicate. Mycorrhizal fungi really thrive in this environment. They form partnerships with plant roots and dramatically extend the reach of the root system, pulling in water and nutrients from a much larger volume of soil than the roots could access alone. The other significant benefit is water retention. Rotting wood is extraordinarily absorbent. It can hold many times its own weight in water, and the woody core at the base of a raised bed acts as a reservoir that releases moisture slowly during dry periods. Gardeners who use Hugelkultur beds consistently report needing to water much less once the system is established, especially in the second and third year when the decomposition is really underway. Let me show you what this is like in cross-section, because seeing the layers makes it much easier to understand. At the very bottom, cardboard goes directly on the ground, overlapping at the edges. Above that, your Hugelkultur core, logs and larger branches at the base, transitioning to smaller branches and wood chips as you work upward, filling roughly the lower third to half of the bed depending on its depth. Above the woody core is a transition layer of rough compost or aged wood chips, maybe 3 to 4 inches, which bridges the texture difference between the woody material and the finer growing medium. Then comes your main growing medium, that compost and topsoil blend we talked about earlier, filling the upper 8 to 12 inches of the bed. And finally, on top of everything, a mulch layer of wood chips, straw, or shredded leaves 2 to 3 inches deep, covering the soil surface and protecting everything underneath. That mulch layer at the top is doing more than you might realize. It's regulating soil temperature, preventing moisture evaporation, suppressing weeds at the surface, and as it breaks down, it feeds the soil biology from the top while the Hugelkultur core feeds it from below. Your soil is being nourished from both directions, and the earthworms and microbes in the middle are processing all of it into plant-available fertility. This is what people discussing permaculture mean when they talk about working with nature instead of against it. You've created conditions where the natural processes of decomposition and nutrient cycling are doing most of the work for you. There's one thing about raised beds that surprises almost every first-year gardener. Your bed is going to settle, sometimes dramatically. Organic matter decomposes. That's the whole point. It's breaking down into plant-available nutrients and being consumed by the organisms that make your soil alive. But the practical consequence is that a bed you filled to within an inch of the top in spring might be sitting 4 to 6 inches lower by the following spring. Much of this happens in the first year when decomposition is most active and the initial materials are compressing under their own weight. This is completely normal and it's not a problem. It's actually a sign that your soil biology is working, but it does mean you need to build topping up in your annual garden routine. Each spring, before the main planting season, add a 2 to 3 inch layer of good compost to the surface of every bed. Don't dig it in, just spread it on top and let the earthworms incorporate it in downward, which they will do reliably over the course of the season. You're feeding the system from the top, mimicking the way organic material accumulates naturally in a forest, and the soil life does the work of distributing it. Over time, the settling slows down. A bed in its third or fourth year will settle much less than in its first year because the Hugelkultur core is well into its decomposition cycle and has already done most of its shrinking, and the soil structure in the growing medium has had time to develop the kind of biological complexity that holds it together. By the time your bed is fully established, that annual top dressing of compost is usually all the maintenance the soil needs to stay productive. The one additional thing I do is adding a thin layer of compost around any perennial plants or heavy feeders mid-season as a booster, and replacing your mulch layer each year as it breaks down. These are small investments of time and material that pay back in plant health and reduced watering throughout the season. Your soil is not a static thing that you fill once and then plant into. It's a living system that you are tending and building over time, and every layer you add, the cardboard, the woody core, the compost, the mulch, is contributing to that system in a specific way. The first year is always the hardest because you're establishing everything from scratch. By the third year, if you've been consistent with your top dressing, you will have a growing medium that is noticeably richer, more alive, and more productive than what you started with. Soil that improves with time rather than depleting. This permaculture philosophy is exactly what we're aiming for.
In video 5, I'm going deep into woods, the different kinds and qualities you can use in your raised bed projects. Until next time, let's think again and more about our own raised bed projects so we can soon get growing.